Dr. Nogueira, what are the sacred lines of Portuguese foreign policy?
To start with, I would say that we try to cooperate with the West in the defense of Western values, and that is, among others, one of the reasons why we are members of the NATO organization. Secondly, and in accordance with our tradition, we also try to keep very close relations with the Latin American countries, more particularly, for obvious reasons, with our sister nation, Brazil. And then, of course, we try to cooperate with other countries in economic and political matters, and that is why we are members of the OECD, of EFTA, and other likely economic organizations, the Economic Commission for Europe, and other economic and financial organizations. And we try also to be friendly and cooperate with all nations which are willing to do so with Portugal. Of course, our attention is more directed towards the African continent, where we have the very important, very substantial territories which we consider to be integral parts of the Portuguese nation, and our policy is therefore directed to the defense, political and military defense of these territories. Those are, in a nutshell, the main lines of Portuguese foreign policy.
In the event of Dr. Salazar being succeeded, are these policies likely to change in any way?
No, my answer would be entirely negative. These policies, of course, have been directed and guided by Dr. Salazar, but they correspond to the innermost feelings of the Portuguese people. They are in accordance with Portuguese interests. They are entirely in harmony with Portuguese traditions, and therefore it's not likely at all that these policies would ever change.
How strong a case is there for withdrawing from Africa and turning back towards Europe?
Well, I would say that there is no case at all. We don't see any reason why we should withdraw from Africa and look towards Europe. Actually, if you have time and would take the trouble to read a bit of Portuguese history, you would see that throughout these centuries, Portugal never looked towards Europe. Portugal never got itself involved in European affairs. And on the 2 or 3 occasions during our history in which we allowed ourselves to be more involved with European affairs, trouble came to Portugal. Our great tradition is to keep, shall I say, aloof, to keep remote from purely European affairs. We try to cooperate with European nations. We do cooperate with European nations on a bilateral or a multilateral basis, but we certainly do not get involved with the central problems of the European continent. Our problems lie in Africa. It is to Africa that we have looked during the centuries. Certainly, I'm sure, it is to Africa that we will look in the future.
As younger men accede to the government, do you think that this might lead to a liberalisation?
Well, your question is a very good one. And it seems to me that it implies that you believe that older men are rather conservative and less liberal, and that young men are more outspoken and more liberal. I would not agree to that, and I have seen many young men proposing or arguing or defending principles which, in my view, would lead to situations far less liberal than those imposed by the older people.